Hello, my name is Shirlene. I have an identical twin sister named Erlene. We're commonly known as UFO twins. We have written a book titled From the Motherland to the Mothership. We're real proud of it. It's on Amazon with 5 stars, and it details about 3 years of my UFO interactions with extraterrestrials. Now, I've had more since then. It's been actually more like 30 years, but not as often as I used to. So we wanted to share this information from my experiences. My twin has had some experiences as well, but I've had primarily most of the experiences, and we'd like to share some of those with you. We hope you'll like them and enjoy hearing our story. And so let's get started. It started with, I think, my twin sister. She was had an assignment in grade school to write a report, and she could pick out the subject. She went to the library and found a book and opened it and saw UFO. And she's been hooked ever since, you might say. She's been just enthralled with the subject. She started collecting articles, magazines with articles about UFOs and abduction stories. She also purchased several books and shared those with me. I didn't have much of an interest at all. It was interesting to hear what she shared and from what she learned. But raising my family with 2 beautiful, wonderful children. They're grown now, and I'm so proud of them both. So anyway, to me, she was the impetus of this. Why they decided to take me instead of her, I don't know. And people ask us that all the time. I think she said years ago that she had more fear, and I just didn't have any fear with this phenomenon. I thought it was very interesting, and I just, I learned not to have fear. So because fear controls you. So anyway, I'll get back to more about that later as I discussed that spiritual path I really went on that helped me with the idea of not giving into fear. So anyway, let's begin the story. And so with my twin sister fascinating the subject and learning more, she made herself a self-made expert on the subject. I didn't know that would help me later on. In a million years, I did not realize this kind of thing would come into my life. I always thought this is something that happens to everyone else. It will never happen to me. And lo and behold, it did. So to move the story along, I was married, living in a suburb of Kansas City called Overland Park. And Erlene, my twin, lived here in Dallas. I'm in Dallas now. I've lived here for quite some time because I decided to get a separation, which ultimately led to a divorce, which is what I needed and wanted at that time in my life. So I moved to move the story along. I moved to Dallas, found a cute little apartment. Just started having so much fun decorating it and hanging out with my sister. We'd go to lunch or dinner, and although she was married, but her husband was so nice about it. He didn't get jealous of the time we were spending together. It was no problem. We could go out. We went out to shopping, and we went and learned. We got connected. It was like learning about each other because we'd been separated through both our marriages and families. Over the years, we visited each other, traveled to see each other, but it was just harder to get together raising a family. So I moved to Dallas and got an apartment, as I mentioned, and decorated and just started just experiencing life, going to different functions and reading different books. I mentioned a spiritual path, and I read books such as The Seat of the Soul, You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay, and Conversations of God was one of the biggest, most important books I've ever read in my life that impacted my life and changed it in so many wonderful ways. It's such a positive book, and I recommend it to anyone who's wanting to expand their spirituality or explore it and grow. And I feel like it just prepared me. I didn't know it was preparing me for interactions with extraterrestrials, but it helped because I learned about fear and not to have fear. Of course, we learned that in church, early on in church too, that God will always protect us, and not to have fear and just have faith and just believe in God. So we were very religious oriented as we were younger. So anyway, I just fell in love with life. It's like life just opened up for the first time. I married real young, and so I didn't get to explore and do much or go much anywhere. Of course, with raising a family, it's more difficult. But I never regret that part. But I did get the freedom I had never experienced before. And so I found myself just in love, dancing through life, happy and joyful. I think my vibration must have been shot up the roof. It was so high. I was so happy, and I even thought about going to a divorce group, just because I thought, well, they may have something I could use. But after going to a group, a divorce group, and they talked about their divorce, everybody was upset. Everyone was sad and crying. I felt so bad for them because I wasn't there. I wasn't feeling that way. I felt liberated, you might say. I felt great. And I was in love. I fell in love with life, and just was incredibly on a high vibration, you might say, high frequency in life. So I left that divorce group really soon after entering the door and heard a few stories. I just didn't fit. It wasn't a match for me, at least where I was at that time. So I left the divorce counseling group, and I just went on with my life, and I got a job. And so I was just enjoying my life. A girlfriend called me that used to live in where we're from, originally from Wichita, Kansas, and she was wanting to talk. She felt like she was kind of down because her engagement broke up, and I tried to lift her spirits, and I talked to her about life that goes on, and there's more fish in the sea, and this is a good thing because now you know he wasn't your match. So she felt a lot better. It seemed like I raised her vibrations, and I was just happy, elated anyway. And she felt that. I could tell she felt that, and she actually said that. She said she felt so much better. So we pretty much, after we ended our conversation, I was going to stay in for the night. So I decided to turn in to bed early, which I did. And sometime during the middle of the night, I woke up, and guess what? You guessed it right. I found myself on a UFO flying through the universe. I know it sounds shocking. It sounds crazy. Even to me, it didn't make any sense, except I knew that kind of thing happened because, like I said, my sister was so involved in the subject and became a self-made expert on the subject and read so much, accumulated so many magazines and books. She has like a library of stuff. And so I knew some of the things that she used to share with me. And I believe these things happen to other people. I never thought they would happen to me, but they did. So I went to, as I mentioned, I went to bed after talking to a friend on the phone that night, Saturday night in January of 1995. And so I was having a very nice night's rest or sleep. And I woke up, I found myself on a UFO traversing the galaxy. It was amazing to see the galaxy through I believe, the eyes of an astronaut, because I was looking at stars. They were still far away, but they were up there with me, with this UFO. And I was on the UFO. I saw meteorites zip through. Most interesting thing I saw were other ships, which were triangular shape, and they were going very fast. And they would come very close to our ship and just veer right off without hitting our ship. And I thought, that is so interesting. It's so strange because we couldn't do that here on course on our planet. If we're driving real fast, we'll hit somebody eventually, and we would crash most likely. So, but they didn't. These ships had almost a mind of their own. They would come close and they'd veer off, and it was just something you can't hardly explain. I can't do much better on how to explain that because it makes no sense. But the sky was full of activity. I called my chapter the universe is alive. This is the first chapter in my book, and so in our book, I should say. And so I was just mesmerized, and I was looking through a window that circled the vehicle all the way around, and the window was so high I can't remember exact measurements, but I could see out. But it looked more like, instead of a window, actually it was like a monitor, and it had a gray like screen like the old Etch-a-Sketch boards, and I saw outlines of buildings, so I didn't see exactly a brown buildings up close like a brown building or anything like that. So we wandered close to what I think was New York City. And so I didn't see brownstones, I didn't see color, but I could see the outline of these buildings on this monitor. It was amazing. And the technology was much more advanced than that back in 1995. It was so much more advanced than ours still is today. So I was just mesmerized at looking at things going on in the universe, and also how we approached this city that looked like New York City, And ultimately, there was no other extraterrestrials in the vehicle that I could see. I think they kept me from my having ability to see them directly, and that was okay because that was my first trip out. I probably didn't need to see an ET that night, but there would be other visits whereby I did meet multiple ETs or species in different places, planets, and so forth. But that night I didn't see anybody. But what was really weird is that my ex-husband popped up, or I should say the man I was separated from, my ex-husband, his image, I should say, popped up in the scene. I think he was a hologram. I think they created a hologram of him just to prevent me from being frightened. And so he was asking the extraterrestrials. I couldn't see who he was asking, and I'm not sure if he could either. But I didn't feel like it was all real. I felt like that part was a hologram. He did ask, where are we going? How do I get back? Who's in charge? Those kind of things. He wants to know. Of course, I needed to know too and wanted to know, but I was just, as I say, mesmerized by being on a UFO and seeing what I was seeing out of the monitor. And so he ultimately disappeared within seconds after asking all those questions. They didn't answer any of those questions that I could tell, I could hear. And he just vanished like I said, kind of like a hologram would do. And so I know now that wasn't him, because I asked him the next day, were you on any strange UFO? You have anything strange? I didn't want to tell him UFOs. So I said, do you have any strange experiences last night? He said, no. I said, middle of the night? No. It was a normal night. So I know it wasn't him. I know it was a hologram of some sort that they can create. Anyway, so soon after that, I found myself back in my bed, and I didn't feel right. It felt really funny. I felt like my body was not put back together. I felt like I had been disassembled. And I think they call it, when we were in science, molecularly broken down, except I didn't know that happened with bodies. And then recomposed again. No, they didn't teach us that in science. So, but I know that's what happened. I had that strange knowingness, a strange feeling that that's what had occurred. And I didn't understand how they could do something like that to a person. And I remember waking up in bed, feeling my body, making sure everything was back in place, arms, legs, everything back in place. Because I know just seconds before that, I was not physical. So it was so amazing. I'll never forget that night. But anyway, I finally calmed down that I was in place, but I still felt a little unbalanced when I got up and tried to walk. I wasn't sure myself, so to speak. Almost like a new baby trying to walk. I just didn't have the balance right then when I returned. But I managed to get a hold of myself, so to speak, and I thought, okay, I'm feeling lightheaded and I'm feeling unbalanced and off. I thought, well, did I drink anything last night? And I thought, no, I didn't have anything to drink that might have put me in this position, in this condition. So I couldn't understand it. I was trying to rationalize what happened, what just happened. And I had no answers. I got no answers. But I knew in the heart, in my soul, in the essence of who I am, I know I was not in that bed that night. I did not stay in that bed. I feel like I was taken. I know I was taken, and I was other places. So I thought, well, maybe I should maybe I should go to the hospital first of all, because I'm not feeling right. That even the air in the room, in the apartment felt different. I thought, I look at my thermostat and it never changed, but yet the air felt different. Maybe because they were in my room. I had been in my room. And then I thought, I'm not feeling quite right, as I mentioned the symptoms I was having, so maybe I should go to the hospital and see what's going on with me. And I thought, oh no, this is going to sound, if I explain this story to someone, it'll sound like I'm crazy, and they would probably want to put me in a psych ward, and that was not going to happen. I was living my life, and I was not going to let something like that happen. But I knew I wasn't crazy anyway. But I couldn't convince a doctor or nurse that was to examining me of what I just went through. They wouldn't have believed me. And the police, I thought about them. I thought, well, maybe someone came in my apartment, broke in and drugged me and took me off into space somewhere. That didn't make sense, because how would they be able to create those scenes? I wouldn't know. So I didn't think that was the issue. But I couldn't figure out what the issue was. So I knew it was the strangest feeling to know this thing happened to you, but you don't have anyone you can tell. You can't share with anyone. I could tell my sister, but I didn't want to wake her up in the middle of the night. She wasn't crazy about it. She once told me, don't wake me up in the middle of the night unless it's an emergency. I didn't know if this really constituted an emergency, so I didn't call her and her husband. I would have woke probably both of them, had to wake them both up, or she would woke him up as well to hear this story. But I just decided to go back to bed and go back to sleep. But I just somehow started speaking to the entities, because I knew they were still near me. And I said out loud, just off the cuff, I do not wish to return tonight. And I was exhausted, to be honest with you. I know I needed to go to sleep and rest, because that was quite an experience. So they honored that request. They did not have me return that night. But I didn't know then that there would be many more times I would go back. I had a feeling, I didn't know for sure, but I just had a feeling they'd be back. And of course they were for the following 3 years. Once or twice a week I was being taken out into different places and having different things happen or go on with my body, anything that you can imagine, almost everything you can imagine. I think I probably experienced it in these events. So that is the first night. I call that the universe is alive, because it was so beautiful on the first night of my trip. And I used the word trip because it felt like a trip. I went somewhere, I came back. That's what you do when you go on this planet. If you go somewhere, you come back, you take a trip to the store or whatever. So I call it the night of my first trip, except this one was into the universe. So I hope you enjoyed this video. We're planning to create more videos about the experiences as we go along, and hope that this helps someone to know if you're having these type of experiences. Friends and relatives may all think you're crazy if you share it with them. And thank God I had a twin sister who knew about the subject. It's almost like we were a perfect match for this event in our lives, because she was interested in it, familiar with it from her studies, and then I started actually going out into space, having experiences she learned about. It's just weird. Maybe that's the mystery of twins. I don't know. It's still, to me, to this day, it sounds crazy. It sounds strange, but every single word I'm going to share, and that she will share too, will sound strange, but we're telling the truth about everything. So I hope you have enjoyed it. We appreciate it if you like, subscribe, and share with others that particularly may like this subject or interested in it, because there's a lot that's been withheld from us. Our government has not let us in on, but there are many people going out and experiencing these things and coming back and sharing their stories. So this is how we're going to learn, and this is how I think we're going to get disclosure. Thank you for watching. Hope this has been interesting, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you. Bye-bye.